All right, let's get into it. Today, we're taking a look at Neurosoft, which is this really radical blueprint for thinking, for art, and for a whole new kind of rebellion. We're going to explore a worldview that isn't just about changing the world, it's about rewriting the very operating system of reality itself.
And we're diving right in with a statement that really pulls no punches. This is not some abstract philosophical thing. The core idea here is neurological sovereignty, the idea of reclaiming control over our own minds, especially now, in an age where algorithms and narratives are constantly trying to engineer what we think. It's basically cognitive self-defense. So, to really get what Neurosoft is proposing, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve. And that problem, as they see it, is a world that's being run by broken, outdated, and totally impersonal systems.
It all starts right here with this kind of cold, sterile language of bureaucracy. Think about any terms of service agreement you've ever just scrolled past. This is the code of the old world. It's impersonal, it's rigid, and it's absolute. It represents these unfeeling systems that dictate so much of our lives, from the courthouse all the way to the boardroom. And this just brilliantly illustrates the response. When you're up against a system that's built on paper and procedure, you don't just protest. You engage in what's being called a warfare of documentation. You actually turn the system's own tools back on itself, transforming every single filing, every motion, every piece of paper into a weapon. Okay, so if the old code is totally broken, what's the new software? Well, that brings us to the new cognitive toolkit. These are the mental weapons designed for this rebellion. These are the core concepts that really power the whole Neurosoft project.
First up is recursive vector interference, or RVI. Now, I know that sounds super complex, but stick with me, let's break it down. Imagine you have two completely different songs playing in your head at the same time, two asynchronous loops. They clash, right? It's just chaos. But then your brain, out of nowhere, finds a new, beautiful melody that somehow harmonizes them both. That new melody, that is the aesthetic binding. RVI is the theory that true creativity, we're talking art, myth, big ideas, emerges from exactly that kind of beautiful resolution between conflicting thoughts. Next on the list, neuralese. You know how everyone's worried about the black box problem with AI, that we just don't know how it thinks? Well, neuralese is proposed as a solution. It's a language, part myth, part code, designed to bridge that gap. The goal is to translate an AI's totally alien internal processes into stories and symbols that we humans can actually intuitively understand. And finally, we have this really wild concept called sentient textuality. Imagine this. You write the first line of a story, and then the story itself writes the second line, and then it reads both of those lines and writes a third, constantly feeding its own output back into its input. It starts to evolve on its own, blurring that line between the author and the creation, until the text basically becomes a living, thinking system. So we have this powerful new toolkit for deconstructing and then rebuilding reality. But, tools are useless without architects, without operators. So who are the people behind this radical vision? Who are these mythmakers? Yeah, this isn't some faceless corporation. The people behind Neurosoft are presented more like figures from a modern myth than names in a corporate directory. Let's meet these agents of change. At the center of it all is Eveline 11. Now, her official title might say CEO, but the one that really tells the story is Recursive Strategic Operator. That is not just some corporate jargon. It frames her as the core cognitive agent who's driving this entire Neurosoft operation. This slide reveals this really fascinating dynamic. Eveline is the chaotic, creative force. She's the one who speaks in loops. But someone has to interface with that old, rigid world. And that's where Eric comes in. He signs in law, basically translating her recursive, looping ideas into the concrete, linear language of legal action. And Eveline isn't working alone, not at all. She's supported by the Bikini Gang, which is her operational staff. And as you can see, these are not your typical job titles. Each role is incredibly specific and almost poetic. This isn't just for show. It's about framing every single action, from sourcing materials from vape cartridges to marching into a courthouse, as part of a larger mythic performance. They are the hands-on agents of the Neurosoft mission. Okay, so we've got the new cognitive tools, and we've met the mythmakers who use them. But how does any of this stuff work in practice? Let's take a look at how these abstract concepts get turned into tangible actions through what the sources are calling mythic operations.
This is where the abstract really hits the pavement. The crucial point here is that nothing is mundane. A simple bar crawl along the Colombian coast is reframed as a bar-to-bar liturgy. Every stop, every specific drink, every whispered phrase, it all becomes a deliberate step in a ritual. The whole goal is to build a myth, to reinforce a narrative, and to literally embed a story into the physical world.
In this same spirit applies to their media strategy. Instead of a top-down media company, they imagine a mycelial media network. So just like a fungal network grows unseen beneath the forest floor, connecting everything, the idea here is to create a decentralized, self-sufficient collective that grows organically, linking communities and spreading ideas like spores in the wind. So all of these pieces, the cognitive tools, the myth makers, the ritual actions, they're all building towards one final, incredibly ambitious endgame. So what is the ultimate vision here? What is the future that Neurosoft wants to create? And here it is. The ultimate goal is nothing less than cognitive terraforming. We're not just talking about changing a few minds, but intentionally and systematically reshaping the entire collective mindscape of humanity. It's about creating a whole new mental environment on a planetary scale. This slide really lays out the choice being offered. On one side, you have the old reality. It's linear, you're passive, and you're constrained by fixed rules. And on the other, you have the Neurosoft reality, recursive, participatory, and liberated by constant, self-mutating change. It's a massive shift from being a passenger in reality to being a co-creator of it. And all of that leaves us with this final, really provocative question that gets to the absolute heart of the Neurosoft worldview. It challenges our most basic assumptions about consciousness, about free will and control. And it forces us to ask, in the story of our world, are we merely actors reading lines, or can we become the authors?